Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a powerful climbing team that just went 18-7 to reach expert and leaderboards in the Sunshine Cup. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community and legend of the game, King IV, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now the team King is using is Energy Ball Jumpluff, Brick Break Furret, and Shadow Swampert. And as I mentioned, he went 18-7 with it on stream to make it to expert, and I believe to the global leaderboards as well. So without further ado, let's hop on the matches. And in game number 1, off to a dominant start, Jumpluff into Swampert, and the Swampert is not switching out. Even though Swampert does have Sludge that can hit for super effective damage, Sludge does not come close to two-shotting when the Jumpluff and the Swampert are both not Shadow. Opponent is going to make a really nice prediction catching on to Credilli. It is a Bullet Seed Credilli, and Credilli is going to be answered with Furret. Now you may notice this Furret is not on Trailblaze, but rather it's on Brick Break. Brick Break is going to help Furret in matchups like Credilli, Macargo, and Ferrothorn. Credilli is going to debuff, Furret will fire off a Swift just to ensure that the opponent does get knocked out here. So down goes Credilli, switch advantage has been preserved, and now back in comes Swampert. Swampert is going to overfarm, playing to the CMP tie to deny Furret's Swift, as Hydro Cannon will pick up the KO. Back in comes Jumpluff farming up to the Energy Ball. Opponent tries to go for the CMP tie. Jumpluff still not going to get KO'd by a Sludge, so it's a pretty comfortable no shield. No baits here from King, full sending the Energy Ball. Opponent is going to put up a shield. Opponent not even going to let an Aerial Ace land here before they fire off another Sludge. They actually go for a Hydro to cover for a catch. So a pretty nice play from the opponent since a Hydro Cannon would still be lethal from this health range. The Energy Ball is going to be shielded. Jumpluff gets the Aerial Ace. Opponent is going to go for a catch onto Abomasnow. But this actually works out great, as now the Abomasnow will very comfortably get knocked out by the Shadow Swampert. Opponent only ends up going for the Weather Ball, and Weather Ball is not something Shadow Swampert has to worry about. Swampert more than happy to absorb that damage, and now fire off the Sludge. Sludge picks up the KO. Opponent needs a Mud Shot down to win, and they're not going to get it. Shadow Swampert with the perfect energy management KOs the opponent, and that's going to be a Game 1 win. We move to game number 2, and it's the same lead as last game, Jumpluff into Swampert. This opponent, however, is going to immediately pivot out. They send in Furret. King is going to bank an Aerial Ace, and now switch into the mirror. He is down energy, but what he has that his opponent doesn't is Brick Break. Obviously, the opponent does get to ramp up their attack with Trailblaze, but Brick Break is less expensive than Trailblaze, so even though he's down energy, King is able to ramp up his Sucker Punches. Opponent will now fire off a Swift. We are going to see a shield, and now Furret is going to fire off a Swift of their own. This will guarantee that alignment will be kept. The opponent commits the shield. They're going to try and get to another Swift, but they cannot get there. Due to the Brick Break debuff, they get farmed down. In comes Swampert, and now Swampert is going to be met with another Swift. So Furret putting in so much work in this mid game. In comes Jumpluff, and Jumpluff did bank an Aerial Ace from earlier. So Jumpluff more than happy to absorb a Sludge. In the back is going to be Credilli. It is an Acid Credilli, and this will be chipped with an Energy Ball. Energy Ball is going to be shielded, and now Shadow Swampert hits the field. Shadow Swampert immediately under threat from a Grass Knot. Swampert is going to commit the shield, but it's not a Grass Knot. It's going to be a Rock Tomb from the opponent. But Shadow Swampert does get the back-to-back Hydro Cannons. Even with the debuff, can Hydro Cannon two-shot? It looks like the answer is yes, and it has to, because this is a CMP tie to the Grass Knot. Hydro Cannon will still pick up the KO. In comes the opponent Swampert. They're going to lose charge attack priority. Hydro Cannon is reached. Down goes the opponent Swampert, and that's going to be a Game 2 win as well. Moving into game number 3, Jumpluff into Furret, and this is a pretty nice matchup for the Jumpluff. As Furret, it's at its strongest when it's able to ramp up its damage with Trailblaze, but realistically, you don't really want to be throwing a Trailblaze at a Grass and Flying type where your charge attack is going to be double resisted and basically do no damage. Jumpluff able to land the Energy Ball that does big damage onto the Furret. Furret going to be firing off another Swift, but this Swift just simply does not threaten the Jumpluff. Jumpluff will look to guarantee switch advantage or shield advantage by firing off this Energy Ball, and the opponent decides to commit a shield. Jumpluff will get an Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace will not knock out, but it will get the opponent very, very low. Furret hangs on 1 HP, King more than happy to concede switch advantage because he has a shield advantage and now a Shadow Swampert up a Mud Shot. This Swampert is going to be met with a Shadow Water Gun Quagsire. Water Gun Quagsire definitely picking up in popularity, but the Water Guns honestly don't do a ton to the Shadow Swampert, not when you compare it to the Hydro Cannon damage. Quagsire gets absolutely rocked, able to get the shield back with the Aqua Tail. Swampert farming up, goes for the snipe with the Furret, but the opponent is now going to send out Wigglytuff as their final Pokemon. Wigglytuff, a Pokemon that is eligible in this meta, but Wigglytuff's neutrals are not the strongest. Wigglytuff, even though it does have a Sucker Punch resist, really does not appreciate the Swift damage. Swift number 2 is going to land Wigglytuff now deep into the red, and Wigglytuff will have to fire off the Swift. But Furret is going to shield, because if you can get shields away from fast move pressure mons, that's how you beat them. Furret fires off the Swift, there's the shield from the Wigglytuff, and there is the vicious combo play from the Shadow Swampert. Hydro Cannon is going to land, down goes Wigglytuff, in comes Quagsire, able to make the move with 1 hit point of health remaining, but it's just too little, too late. In comes the Furret, down goes the Quagsire, and that is a good game. We see a Nightmare lead in the next match, Jumpluff into Ice Fang Hippowdon. Safe switch Furret answered with Blaziken. This is actually the non-Shadow Blaziken though. Non-Shadow Blaziken, the benefit is you don't have to shield a Swift from Furret, but the disadvantage is you cannot farm down. Instead, Blaziken is forced to fire off a Blaze Kick, and considering the slow energy generation of Counter, that's a lot of energy that Blaziken just had to waste. But this does present an opportunity for Jumpluff to get a very healthy energy head start. As Jumpluff, it knows there's an Ice Fang Hippowdon, so the Jumpluff's never going to be shielding, but if it can get an Energy Ball to threaten the Hippowdon, then that could honestly work out pretty nicely. Hippowdon now immediately under pressure from the Energy Ball. There's going to be the shield, there is Swampert, in the back is going to be a Quagsire, but this time not on Water Gun, it's going to be on Mud Shot. But this Swampert is up energy, up a shield, that is so much damage. Swampert potentially can look for a full farm down now. Swampert will be putting up the shield as Quagsire goes for the Aqua Tail. Quagsire making Aqua Tail number 2, but at this point Shadow Swampert is smelling blood in the water. Swampert gets the full farm down, leaving with the back-to-back Hydro Cannons, and even despite leading Jumpluff into an Ice Fang Hippowdon, it's just not gonna matter. The Jumpluff forced a shield from Hippowdon, and up a shield, Swampert is just an absolute menace and takes home the win. Dream lead in the next match. What a turn of events. Jumpluff into Chestnut. Opponent safe switches an Ice Fang Shadow Hippowdon. The second game in a row we've seen it, but this time this is the alignment that King's going to want. Oh, it's actually a regular Hippowdon. That's even more surprising. It's a regular Hippowdon, and they actually ended up investing a shield in this matchup. They're never going to be able to flip this with Ice Fang damage, so King will always get to exit this matchup with a solid amount of energy. The opponent finally lets go of the Hippowdon and brings back in Chestnut, but Chestnut cannot get the farm down. Shadow Swampert Sludge will inflict massive damage onto the Chestnut. In the back is Clodsire, and this is genuinely a problem Pokemon for the Furret Jumpluff core. While Claude does beat both, I don't think it's going to be able to 1v2. The opponent doesn't either, and they will resign the match. Man, tough opponent in the next match, as it's going to be Z Zweilous. And Z Zweilous is bringing out a Pokemon I haven't seen in ages. It's Greedent. Z Zweilous has made a name for himself as one of the most creative team builders in the entire Go Battle League. It looks like the Sunshine Cup meta is no exception for him, as he's bringing out the Tackle Greedent. Now these tackles are adding up quite a bit. Greedent fires off the Body Slam, going for Body Slam number 2. And Jumpluff more than happy to absorb the damage, but Jumpluff is now pretty close to red HP. Energy Ball will come very close to knocking out here. Energy Ball does not knock out. Aggressive switch by Z Zweilous into Blaziken, but Blaziken immediately under threat from Aerial Ace. The Aerial Ace is going to be shielded. Out comes Shadow Swampert. These counters will inflict some serious damage, but the Mud Shots are absolutely keeping pace. Blaze Kick is going to grab the shield. Swampert can now look to double up on Hydro Cannons. Blaziken, due to its slow pacing, cannot afford to shield here because it does not have a move. So Blaziken is forced to just let itself get knocked out. In the back, it's going to be Quagsire, and I believe I did see the Water Gun animation there. Hydro Cannon grabs the shield. Shadow Swampert, so oppressive. Swampert is going to get farmed down, but now in comes Jumpluff. Jumpluff farming up. We see the Aerial Ace caught onto the Greedent. Very nice catch by Z Zweilous, doing everything he can to try and claw his way back in this game. There's so much energy loaded on the Quagsire, and we will see the shield from the Furret. Furret shielding up the Aqua Tail, getting to the Swift. Now, Swift will not knock out, but it will do a sizable amount of damage to this Quagsire. Now, the question is, can Quagsire get to enough charge moves to win this game? Quagsire goes for the Aqua Tail. That lands onto the Furret. There's Aqua Tail number 2, and now it's going to be a fast move race. Water Gun versus Fairy Wind. Oh, but it doesn't knock out. One more Sucker Punch lands. Fairy Wind KOs. What a close game, but King Ivy is victorious. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Jumpluff into Shadow Pidgeot. The safe switch into Furret answered with Shadow Blaziken. Normally, Shadow Blaziken does have to shield here, but because a Gust landed, I think the opponent will actually be okay to no shield. They're going to get down to a fraction of HP remaining, but because that Gust landed, that's basically the equivalent of a counter landing, so that way Blaziken ends up being able to get a full farm down without having to use a shield. Blaziken is on Stone Edge. Jumpluff gets absolutely rocked. In comes Pidgeot, and Pidgeot will unfortunately get a farm down before Jumpluff is able to switch out. Jumpluff's Aerial Ace is going to land. In comes Shadow Swampert, but unfortunately this is probably going to be too much for Shadow Swampert to handle unless it's something like a Macargo in the back, and that is not a Macargo, that is a Shadow Kanto Marowak, and there's just too much fast move pressure. It doesn't matter what the opponent shields, there's just no win con in this game, unfortunately, and King knows it, so he's just going to let the Swampert go, and that is going to be the first loss that this team suffers. We move to the next match, this team looking for a bit of redemption after the loss last game, and it's a mirror lead, but the opponent's Jumpluff is Shadow. Usually the Shadow Jumpluffs almost always have Acrobatics. Acrobatics does not one-shot a normal Jumpluff, so the first move is never going to be able to pick up a knockout. King knows this, and we see his confident, immediate no-shield, but the opponent only ends up going for the Aerial Ace. King just needs whatever damage he can get in this matchup, so he will fire off the Aerial Ace. Opponent is going to no-shield, and if they have Acrobatics, it will knock out, and they're going to get switch advantage in this game. There goes the Acrobatics, down goes Jumpluff, and now out comes Furret. Furret is going to go for a full farm down, Jumpluff firing off a last second charge attack, only going to be the Aerial Ace, quick switch into the Swampert, and that is a nasty mud shot down. Oh, what a play! Out comes Diggersby. Oh no, if this is their response to a Shadow Swampert up energy, I fear this game may be over. Diggersby commits the shield, but Shadow Swampert is just too far ahead. Before they can even get a Scorching Sands, there's another Hydro Cannon, and both shields are down for the opponent. Will the opponent bait, or will they fish for a debuff? They will bait with a Fire Punch. These quick attacks do add up over time, but Shadow Swampert is going to be double shielding Fire Punches. Swampert knows this Hydro Cannon is just going to do too much damage to the Diggersby. Diggersby is going to get hit with the Hydro Cannon. There's the switch, and Furret is able to get the snipe. Furret is still very, very healthy, and this way the Swampert gets preserved. In the back is going to be Macargo, and this is where Brick Break can be game winning. Because if it's Trailblaze, the opponent doesn't really care about the damage. But with Brick Break, they absolutely do. Because the opponent tries to farm down, a second Brick Break is reached that just KOs the Macargo, and that game will be a win. We move to the next match. Great lead, Jumpluff into Shadow Blaziken. Oh no, the Blaziken is staying in, and it appears this opponent is completely core broken. My guess is they probably have either a Water Gun Quagsire or a Swampert in the back, and they just don't really have anything for a Jumpluff on the lead. Jumpluff will commit the shield as Blaziken will go for the Blaze Kick. There's a switch out, opponent going to send in their own Jumpluff, but King being so far ahead on energy on his Jumpluff means that he's pretty okay with this. Aerial Ace is going to land, he's able to save some energy for later and send in Furret. Furret, it doesn't matter what moveset the opponent has, Furret will always be able to absorb energy here. It is going to be an Energy Ball, and now Furret gets to chip away at their remaining health bar with a Swift. Swift is going to land, one more Swift would be able to pick up the knockout, but not before the opponent will make it to a last second Energy Ball. This Energy Ball lands, Furret survives. We do see an aggressive pivot by the opponent. They bring in Macargo, so they're actually ABA Fire. They definitely could have just switched Jumpluff into Jumpluff. I don't really know why they stayed in with Blaziken there. Overheat lands, Swampert gets rocked, my goodness, but Swampert is able to get the back-to-back Hydro Cannons. This Hydro Cannon is going to land, picking up the knockout. Opponent brings in the Blaziken. We see the Sludge fired off by the Swampert. Even a Sludge would threaten to KO. There's the switch into the Jumpluff. I was really expecting to see a Quag or a Swampert in the back. I was not expecting to see Macargo, but either way, that game is going to end in victory. And we have the Battle of Titans in the final match, King IV versus Rise to Occasion. Great lead for King. We see a safe switch into Furret by Rise, and Rise definitely in a tough spot alignment-wise early in this game. The Aerial Ace will land. Now King will switch in his Furret, as Rise will look to go for a Trailblaze. Trailblaze lands. Rise, his Sucker Punch is now boosted. King is going to boost up his Sucker Punches by lowering Rise's defense with a Brick Break. The Brick Break is going to land. Rise does get to the boosted Swift. King with the no shield. He should be able to hang on here. He does survive. It's a simul KO, and now it's a true 50-50. Who will bring in what? Waiting down the timer, it counts down to 0. In comes Swampert, answered with a Talonflame, and King gets the 50-50 right. Flygon gonna be answered with Jumpluff. Jumpluff farming up a ton of energy, going to go for an Energy Ball, but gonna go for an Undercharge. King does not want to knock out the Flygon. Instead, he wants to try and get energy. Rise only gonna fire off energy at the last possible second here. Flygon will go for the Dragon Claw. He's gonna Undercharge, and we see both battlers waiting. Neither battler wants to knock each other out until the switch timer is up. The switch timer is now up for King. King looking to pivot out as Talonflame hits the field, and Talonflame is just always going to be behind in this matchup. Rise's play in this game was exactly what he did. He needed King to KO the Flygon so he could get a massive energy head start on Talon and overwhelm the Swampert, but King, he knew, he waited, he did not KO the Flygon, and now he's able to take home the win. All in all, it is, to me, a great personal honor to have King reach out to have me shoutcast his battles. King is someone who I watched his content so much even before I had a channel myself. Even after all these years, he is still a top tier battler. That game against Rise was incredible. The simultaneous waits on both sides. That to me is what I love the most about Go Battle League, the incredible mind games during matches. And even though alignment was really favorable in that game, Rise was still able to make that extremely close, and King had to basically play perfectly by not KOing the Flygon to ensure that he was going to be able to take home that win. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.